Yeah, let's get into the Rose Bowl. I got to tell you, I think my biggest takeaway from this is like, is Jeremiah Smith the best true freshman since Adrian Peterson in terms of just walking into the sport? Like, I don't think Adrian Peterson understood the position at the same level that Jeremiah Smith does. But in terms of just like physical freak and Smith knowing how to run routes, knowing how to leverage his body, creating space, like when the ball's in the air, like he does stuff that you watch like Devontae Adams do on on Sundays. You're like,
Yeah.
this guy's like, this is what, like, how, dude? And also, like, you heard the hype about him going back to like early in the spring, like week 1 of spring. People were like, oh, Jeremiah Smith, he's the best receiver on Ohio State's roster. And you're kind of like, okay.
They just lost.
Like,
you're like, they just lost Marvin Harrison. Let's calm down a little bit.
And people are like, no, the coaches think he might be better than Marv. And it's like, all right, like, chill out. And now, like, he's better than Marvin Harrison Jr. Am I crazy for saying that? I think that's
no.
I think it's clear to me.
Ubben, and I'm gonna say this on here. This is live. Y'all can at me at DHX34 on Twitter. Y'all can at me at d.soak, SOAQ on Instagram. If I had the number 1 pick today, I want Jeremiah Smith right now, number 1 pick in this year's draft at 19 years old, because he's got the physical God-given ability. He's got all the technical tools in his toolbox that Ubben just said, and he's just a straight-up dog. He sent a message to the University of Oregon and said, if you cover me one-on-one, they are throwing me the football. And he looked like a man amongst boys today. He looks the part. He plays the part. A lot of times you hear the phrase, looks like Tarzan, plays like Jane. No. This dude looks like Tarzan, plays like King Kong, Godzilla, all of that. Like, this dude, I have never seen a kid. And it's so funny because we were just talking about we're having the same conversation about Ryan Williams at the beginning of the season. But now that the season is coming to a head at the end and we're seeing the cream of the crop rise, Jeremiah Smith is the best wide receiver in football. I don't care who won the Biletnikoff. I don't care who people think should be the top pick. Who is this? Who is that? Jeremiah Smith, when you talk about the receiver position, knowing how to play it, having the toolbox, like having 3x size hands to just catch the football. Like, have you guys noticed that when the ball touches his hands, it just never moves? It's like
even when he one hands it.
When he literally, like, I've never seen a one-handed bobble. I've never seen a two-handed bobble. Like, this dude is him, as these young kids say.
I think the difference between him and Ryan Williams is Ryan Williams can make these crazy contested catches and obviously has probably a little more speed. But like, Ryan Williams is not nearly as refined, and Jeremiah Smith doesn't have to make as many contested catches because he creates more separation, and then he can just go over guys. Like, he's elevating, and that's like, it's sort of a contested catch, but also like the DBs might as well not even be there because he's elevating over them, and it doesn't even matter where they're.
It reminds me.
Oh, go ahead. He had more yards than Oregon as a team in the first half. He had 161 receiving yards. Oregon had 139. I gotta admit, I was wrong about something here, which was on our preview. I was like workshopping a take in real time, wondering if Oregon playing Ohio State now was actually advantageous to them, as opposed to later, because you're rested. They just played. They might be banged up. It's Pacific time zone. You got the body clocks and all this stuff. Completely wrong. That was obviously way out there. Ohio State was as dominant in this game against the number 1 team as they were against Kentucky in the first round. My prediction at the beginning of the year, it was up for worst take on our awards a couple weeks ago, that Ohio State would go 16-0. It's technically not true, but it might be spiritually true. 2 games with 2 games to go. They may end up winning the national championship, and it feels like they were the clear best team in the country. So not wrong, not right, but maybe just a little early.
You know who deserves a big shout out in this game is Mr. Jack Sawyer, because Ohio State, it's 34-0. It's ball game. You get the touchdown before half, and then Oregon scores again. It's 34, was it 16? 15. 34-15. And then Ohio State goes 3 and out, and you're like, I don't think this is happening, but like, if it's going to happen, now's the time it's going to happen. And then Jack Sawyer sort of took over, started wrecking shop. He had 1 sack, and then he kind of forced him into another sack on 3rd down to get them the ball back. And at that point, like the drama was kind of over. I think they scored on their next drive to make it 41-15. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was never really competitive after that. That whatever nerves there were at that point, like Jack Sawyer kind of iced that game in the third quarter and made everyone's life on the sidelines, the people wearing, scarlet and gray in the stands, feel a little bit better. So shout out to Jack Sawyer, low key, kind of an MVP in this game.
Well, and remember, Sawyer's the one who we all saw after the flag planting incident losing his mind and saying they can't do and he got made fun of a lot from a lot of people for doing that. But as it turns out, he cared more than anybody else on that team. And I think he's seen that now as a clear leader on that team, and it's taking place on the field.
He strikes me as the guy, and I mean this as a compliment, as a psycho. Like the guy that you see him and you're like, oh, I'm glad he's on our side. I don't want to be lined up against that guy. Like he looks like he's going insane half the time, and then he's just that defensive end, a good spot to have that kind of dude on your team.
He's literally Cam Scattaboo on defense.
Yeah,
they had Ohio State finished with 8 sacks, 13 TFLs, 9 pass breakups. They completely overwhelmed Oregon's offensive line. That's where they won the game.
Is there even really anything to say about Oregon? And I'm not saying that in a negative way, but I don't even think that it was necessarily Oregon played that bad. They had a bad game plan. Dan Lanning didn't necessarily have them ready to go, but that version of Ohio State is clearly the best team in the country. That's what Ryan Day and these boosters, the athletic director, all the people who what's the word?
Spent their $20 million.
All the people who were bragging about spending $20 million assembling the greatest roster that has ever been assembled. That team right there, this is the team that all Ohio State fans have been pompous about and honestly pissed off because they haven't been seeing it every single week. So I'm not even really mad at Oregon. I'm not mad at Dylan Gabriel. I'm not mad at Dan Lanning because they were on the tracks and Ohio State was the train. There was literally nothing Oregon could do on this.
Let me ask you guys this. Is Ryan Day now fully off the hot seat?
I think among reasonable people, yes. Among the Ohio State diehards, not until he beats Michigan next year.
Yeah.
Which we assumed was going to happen last year because Michigan, we knew they were going to be going into a full reboot. People thought, 8-9 wins at most. They didn't even end up getting that, although Alabama helped them get to 7. It just seems like that until he gets over that hurdle, there's going to be a low level, grumbling, a simmering in the pot that, again, weirdly enough, I think even a national championship will not make go away because you Big Ten people are freaking weird.
I'm not ready to say he's fully off, but now that we see Ohio State playing at its full potential, it feels different because we said all season long, even when they were winning, Ohio State didn't feel like they were hitting that next level that we all knew that they had. They were not taking advantage of this ridiculous, talented, experienced roster that they have. And for whatever reason, the Michigan loss woke them up. The play calls are fantastic. The pass rush is fantastic. Holes are opening up. Will Howard's making electric throws. Jeremiah Smith is being targeted. They're doing everything right. They're doing everything that we thought Ohio State was going to do all year, and they really didn't, and they especially didn't against Michigan. This is one of the most dramatic turnarounds I've ever seen from one game to another game to another game. That team that played against Michigan and this team now, they feel like two completely different teams, and that is wild.
6 yards a carry. That was kind of their biggest issue, was running the ball consistently. That's why they struggle to blow people out as the offensive line. They have been hampered by injuries, but they weren't great to start with.
I started to have a conversation with some people about, depending on how far Dan Lanning takes Oregon, does he become the greatest Oregon head coach of all time? Obviously, we know Chip Kelly, he won a national championship. He played a national championship. He took the team there. How do we compare Dan Lanning? Are we taking away from him because he didn't get another playoff win? Are we still kind of seeing him as the same young, up and coming, one of the top 2 or 3 coaches in the college football world? Or does this knock his resume a little bit?
I think it's still early.
It knocks the resume. It's the big game thing. It's he hasn't won many of the big games. He did beat Ohio State earlier in the year, but then you lose big time in the rematch. You lost twice to Washington last year.
The Washington ones are the bad ones.
You lost to Georgia in your first game, which was admittedly a really tough game, but that is part of the conversation around Lanning. He's still one of the best coaches in the sport, but it's got to be tough to you go through a year and you don't even get a playoff win on your thing. But back to the seeding point, because there's going to be a discussion at the national championship game when all the commissioners get together for their annual CFP meeting. You need unanimous votes to change things for 2025. Do you change the automatic buys or do you change how the seeding works? And I think the way this first round and second round has played off so far is that it's a lot more difficult than people think. Oh, just reseed. Oh, just don't give the first round buys to the conference champions. Well, you know who the most competitive losers have been? It's 12 seed Clemson, who stole a bid. It's Arizona State, who was Big 12 champ, ranked behind Alabama. And
nobody
Boise
respected.
It's Boise State, the group of 5 team, who we're still going to play. So this idea of like, oh, it's not fair, just do this, as if that's going to fix anything, is not accurate at all. And you're then going to hurt the value of the regular season, which is something I keep harping on, and Ubben and I keep going back and forth on. But like this idea of like, oh, this playoff round is ridiculous, we should change it. Like you're not going to find a perfect solution. The NFL is about to have a 14-win NFC North team play on the road for the playoffs because they didn't win the NFC North. That's why that Lions-Vikings game this coming week is so important, because the regular season still has to matter. And I really think people are like, oh, just reseed, or oh, just change this, or oh, take rid of the buys. There are going to be consequences to those changes that people aren't talking about.